welcome to the Global War Watch Network. Before we get started, if you find what we do here valuable, please take a quick second to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more explainers like this one.
Okay, let's get right into it. What we're witnessing here is a huge shift in naval power. You see, for decades, India was the undisputed pioneer of aircraft carriers in Asia. And now, China's third and most advanced carrier is a reality, while India's own next-gen carrier is, well, still just an idea on paper. So the central question is, how did this happen? India had such a massive head start. What on earth changed?
To really understand what's happening now, we have to rewind the clock a little bit. And when you look at the history of these two navies side by side, the contrast is pretty startling.
Just look at this timeline, 1961. That's when India commissioned its first aircraft carrier. China didn't get its first one until 2012. That is a 51-year head start. Think of all that invaluable experience. Everything from handling planes on a pitching deck to managing complex fleet operations. India knew all this stuff long before China even had a carrier. And yet somehow, that entire legacy, that massive advantage, has been completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, this quote really just cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? It suggests that this isn't just about ships and steel. It's a story about two fundamentally different national systems and their very different abilities to get big, ambitious projects off the ground and into the water.
So, how did China catch up so ridiculously fast? Well, it wasn't an accident. Their approach has been incredibly methodical, super focused, and just unbelievably quick. It basically came down to a clear three-step playbook.
You can see the progression so clearly here. First, they learned. They took an old, unfinished Soviet hull, the Liaoning, and used it as a floating schoolhouse to figure out carrier operations from square one. Then they copied. Their second carrier, the Shandong, was basically an improved version of the first one. And finally, they innovated. The Fujian is a massive technological leap. They went from zero to a world-class carrier in a little over a decade. It's a symbol of a system that can move at incredible speed.
Okay, so if China's system is built for speed, what's been holding India back? Well, according to the sources, the answer isn't a lack of skill or will in the Navy itself. The problem is what you might call a bureaucratic anchor, a system in government offices where following the procedure has become more important than achieving the mission.
You don't have to take my word for it. This quote from a former Navy chief points directly at these systemic issues. He pointed out, for example, that when the new INS Vikrant was commissioned in 2022, it didn't even have its own fighter jets because the process to select them hadn't even started on time. The sources point to three major bottlenecks that cause this kind of gridlock.
The first bottleneck is just pure procedural delay. Look at this chart. That yellow line, that's India. At every single stage of buying something, from deciding what's needed to actually signing the contract, the process takes months, and often years, longer than in other countries. On average, a single major purchase can take 5 to 7 years. In today's world, that's a lifetime.
The second problem is a little more subtle. The sources describe it as a culture of fear. The idea is that officials are so afraid of being investigated for their decisions sometimes years after they've retired that they just avoid making any bold or innovative choices. They play it safe. They make the most conventional choice, not the best strategic one, because it's easier to defend on paper. It's a culture that prioritizes following the rules over getting results.
And that brings us to the third bottleneck, known as the L1 trap. L1 simply stands for lowest bidder. It's a rule that says the government has to award a contract to whoever submits the cheapest bid. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a good way to save money, but for something as complicated as a warship or a fighter jet, it can be a disaster.
This chart shows the problem perfectly. That little yellow bar is the L1 model, the low upfront cost. It looks great. But then you look at the red bar right next to it. That's the total cost over the lifetime of the weapon. All the maintenance, the upgrades, the downtime. Suddenly, that cheaper option ends up being way more expensive and a lot less effective. It's a classic case of being penny wise and pound foolish. So, the crucial point here is that all this red tape and these weird incentives aren't just theoretical problems. They've created a very real and growing technology gap at sea. And it's not just about the number of carriers, it's about what those carriers can actually do.
This table breaks down the key difference. India's carriers use a stow bar system. You can just think of it as a ski jump ramp at the end of the deck. It's simpler and it works, but it means planes can't take off with their maximum load of fuel and weapons.
China's new Fujian, though, uses an advanced electromagnetic catapult. It's like a giant, powerful slingshot that can launch much heavier aircraft at their full combat potential.
And that difference is absolutely critical. Because India's carriers can't launch those heavier support planes, they are basically air defense carriers. Their main job is to protect the fleet that's around them. The Fujian, on the other hand, can launch big, fixed-wing early warning aircraft, the eyes of the fleet, that can spot threats from hundreds of miles away. This means China's carrier group can see farther, react faster, and strike harder from a much greater distance. It's a total game changer.
So this widening gap brings India to a really critical decision point. The Navy wants a 3-carrier fleet so that 2 are always ready to deploy. But the really big question now is, what should that 3rd carrier actually be?
And India is facing a tough choice. Option 1 is the pragmatic route. Build another carrier just like the current INS Vikrant. It will be faster, probably ready around 2030, and it keeps the shipyard busy. The big disadvantage? It locks in the existing technology gap. Option 2 is to go big. Build the high-tech INS Vishal, a much larger carrier with catapults that would close that gap with China. But that's a much more complex, expensive project that wouldn't be ready until the late 2030s at the very earliest.
But, the source material makes it clear that building any new carrier won't solve the fundamental problem if the system itself isn't fixed. This roadmap shows the kinds of deep reforms that are needed, things like creating a special team of professionals who actually know how to buy military gear, and getting rid of that L1 trap. It's about fixing the system so India can get the military it needs, when it needs it.
And that leaves us with the final, crucial question. Can India reform its system fast enough? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a race to build ships. It's a race to build a national system that can deliver them effectively. And the outcome of that race is going to reshape the balance of power in the Indian Ocean for decades to come. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. If you found it insightful, please do us a favor and like, share, and subscribe to the Global War Watch Network. We'd love to know what you think in the comments below, and you can join our community on social media. The links for that are right in the description. We'll see you next time.